So, what if I told you that the entire world of digital money, of crypto basically, did a complete 180 in a single year? Yeah, for the longest time, crypto felt like the Wild West, right? Super volatile, super risky, and totally unregulated. But then, this perfect storm of incredible tech breakthroughs and huge policy changes hit, and bam, everything shifted. And that turning point? It all came together in 2025.
I mean, this quote from the Wall Street Journal just nails it, doesn't it? This was the massive question hanging over Ethereum, one of the biggest players in the crypto space. They were trying to pull off this historic, unbelievably risky upgrade. We're talking about changing the engines out in flight on a $200 billion platform. The stakes were just insane. One tiny mistake, one little bug, could have literally vaporized billions of dollars and completely destroyed trust in the whole system. And they did it. They pulled it off. And that success, well, it wasn't just about dodging a bullet. It sent this incredibly powerful signal out to the entire world. It was proof that this technology was mature enough to solve its own huge, monumental problems. And that, right there, paved the way for the mainstream acceptance that was just around the corner.
Okay, so to really get why 2025 was such a huge deal, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to look back at crypto's early days, its, let's call it, chaotic youth. It was an era that was pretty much defined by these insane highs and absolutely crushing lows. For years, the story of crypto was all about these wild boom and bust cycles. I mean, you had flash crashes where prices would just evaporate in minutes. You had the shocking collapse of Mt. Gox, which was the biggest exchange in the world at the time. And who could forget the infamous ICO bubble of 2017? That's when startups raised billions with these initial coin offerings, only for a ton of them to just fizzle out. Every one of these cycles just hammered home the idea that this was all just a big speculative casino.
And, you know, these weren't just crazy headlines for crypto nerds. They fueled the three core criticisms that kept mainstream finance, regulators, you name it, at arm's length. You had the extreme volatility, these massive security failures that eroded trust, and, of course, the huge environmental elephant in the room, that massive energy bill from its mining process.
But then, something changed. The industry proved it could actually fix its own biggest problems, right from the inside out. And we're not talking about some little patch or a minor tweak here. This was a complete, fundamental re-engineering of one of the largest blockchains on the planet.
All right, so the key to this whole thing was a massive shift away from what's called proof of work. You can think of that as this giant global race where super powerful computers are all trying to solve a complex puzzle at the same time. It works, but man, is it wasteful. The new way is called proof of stake, and it's so much smarter. Instead of a race, validators are chosen based on how much crypto they're willing to lock up as collateral. They literally have skin in the game, so they have a financial incentive to keep the network secure. It's a game changer.
And the result of this change, which they called the merge, was just mind-blowing. We're talking about a 99.95% drop in Ethereum's energy use. Let that sink in for a second. Overnight. With one software update, they basically wiped out one of the biggest criticisms leveled against the entire industry. It was incredible.
I mean, just to put that in perspective, Ethereum's creator Vitalik Buterin pointed out that the merge would cut worldwide electricity use by 0.2%. That single event was one of the largest decarbonization events in history. It was a massive statement that, hey, this industry is serious about fixing its flaws and can innovate responsibly. So, just as the tech itself is taking this massive leap forward, the whole political and regulatory landscape was shifting under its feet. Seriously, the timing was almost unbelievable. It was the other half of that perfect storm. And this right here shows you just how huge that shift was. Before 2025, the US stance was basically skepticism and enforcement. That kept all the big traditional financial players on the sidelines. But after 2025, it was a complete flip. The focus became flexibility, with the government openly saying they wanted to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. A total 180.
And look, this wasn't just talk. Regulators started taking real, concrete steps. They backed off on enforcement actions for companies that weren't committing fraud. They gave banks a clear path to get involved. They even started clearing up the confusion around what counts as a security. The message couldn't have been clearer. America was open for business.
So, all this regulatory action, what did it actually mean for people? Well, it wasn't just some abstract policy stuff. It had a huge immediate impact on who could get into digital assets and how they could do it. The floodgates were about to open.
A great example is the Genius Act. This was huge. It created the first real, comprehensive federal rulebook for stablecoins. You know, the crypto assets pegged to the dollar. Suddenly, you had rules. Issuers had to be licensed. They had to prove they had the reserves to back up every single coin. It took stablecoins out of this murky gray area and made them a totally legit part of the financial system.
And this newfound clarity is exactly what we mean when we talk about democratizing digital assets. It made them more accessible to everyone. It paved the way for things like regulated ETFs, exchange-traded funds. All of a sudden, everyday investors could buy crypto through their normal retirement or brokerage account, just as easily as buying a share of stock. No special wallets, no complicated exchanges.
And this number just shows you how massive the demand was. The floodgates didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges. These new ETFs became so incredibly popular that predictions showed them buying up more than 100% of all the newly created Bitcoin by 2026. Think about that. More demand from just this one product than the total new supply being created.
So, as you can imagine, the market responded, and it responded in a big way. After all those years of crazy ups and downs, Bitcoin's price soared, breaking $110,000 by the middle of 2025. This wasn't just another speculative bubble. This was the price reflecting a whole new era of mature tech and mainstream acceptance.
Okay, but this whole revolution wasn't just happening in the US. So let's zoom out for a second and take a look at the bigger picture, see how this new chapter was playing out all across the globe.
Yeah, the big pivot in the US didn't happen in a vacuum. It was really part of this global race to create clear, sensible rules for crypto. You had the European Union rolling out their comprehensive MiCA regulations. The UK was moving fast on stablecoins. Hong Kong was making moves. It felt like the whole world was finally waking up and realizing, okay, this is real and it's here to stay.
So, looking forward, what's next? Well, in the US, the next big piece of the puzzle is something called the Clarity Act. This is all about finally settling that long-running turf war between the two main regulators, the SEC and the CFTC. You know, figuring out who's in charge of what. Getting that sorted out is going to bring even more stability and predictability to the market, which is exactly what big institutions want to see. Which brings us to the big question for 2026 and beyond. With the doors wide open, how fast will the old guard, the traditional financial giants, adapt? Can they compete with all the new, super agile fintech players that grew up in this space? The race is officially on, and it's going to be fascinating to watch.